Robert was senior aide to the Secretary of the Army, as well as Chief of Staff for Congressman John McHugh, when he had a heavy hand in the last major congressional postal reform legislation in 2006. Robert, we're so pleased to have you here today. We appreciate your friendship and everything you've done for us. I look forward to your remarks.
Thank you very much, Matt. Thank you, Paul, Lexington Institute. You've been dear friends for over a quarter of a century on not only postal issues, but defense issues, as you said. I'm going to do something a little weird. I've been sitting here for the whole time with all of you, taking a baseball analogy. If everyone wants to get up for like 5 to 10 seconds as a 7th inning stretch, just to stretch your legs, so at least you can endure the rest of what I've got to say. Please do so. Obviously, a few may want to use this as a chance to leave, but that's okay. No offense. Frankly, the 11 folks that went before me, I'm not sure how much more I can really add or say to that, so good night, everyone. But I'll try nonetheless. As the regulator of our nation's postal administration, I'd like to focus today on the significant challenges facing the U.S. Postal Service. It's important to keep in mind that in the U.S., the Postal Service is 100% part of the federal government. It is not quasi-government, it is not quasi-private or quasi-anything. It is 100% part of the federal government, operating as an independent establishment in the executive branch. Yet, the Postal Service receives no tax dollars for its operating expenses and relies completely on the sale of postage, products, and services to fund its operations. As a separate and independent federal regulatory agency, the Postal Regulatory Commission, I'm joined here today by 2 of my commission colleagues, Commissioner Ashley Poling, Commissioner Ann Fisher. 3/5 of the commissioners here, so we can notice a meeting and make some decisions later. We're the regulator, not the operator of the Postal Service. Now, why a regulator for another government agency? Unlike almost any other federal agency, the Postal Service operates in a commercial marketplace while also having a large contingent of captive customers, given the Postal Service's market dominance over certain products and services. The law provides the Postal Service a statutory monopoly over mailboxes and the delivery of letters. The public interest role of a regulator in this case is clear: a need to protect the captive customers and ensure fair competition. The fundamental problem, as we've heard today, is that the Postal Service is facing significant financial challenges. It cannot generate sufficient funds to cover its mandated expenses while still investing in critically deferred capital needs, such as new delivery vehicles and package sorting equipment. The Postal Service is trying, but the hill is steep. The financials of the Postal Service are a mess. In 2019, the Postal Service had its 13th consecutive annual net loss since 2007, increasing the cumulative net deficit of the Postal Service to almost $72 billion, compounding the issue. Since 2007, most mail volume has steadily decreased, declining from 211 billion pieces to 137 billion pieces, a 35% drop. Total mail volume in 2019 dropped to levels not seen in more than 34 years, and the Postal Service anticipates continuing declines in total volumes. According to the Postal Service, the volume lost to electronic alternatives will not return, as this represents a permanent change in mail use by households and businesses. As the Postal Service states in its recently released 5-year strategic plan, quote, "We expect to run out of liquidity by 2021 if we pay all our financial obligations, and by 2024, even if we continue to default on our year-end lump sum retiree health benefit and pension-related payments," end quote. The pressing question, therefore, is what needs to be done to improve the financial condition of the Postal Service? I would argue the starting point is to look at ourselves. What do each of us, as American citizens, need from the Postal Service as a government service, and what is the cost? Without greater mission clarity, our Postal Service, its employees, its customers, indeed all Americans who depend upon this national treasure, will be set up for frustration and even risk of failure. The single most important thing we can do for the Postal Service and the United States is to define the Postal Service's Universal Service Obligation, or USO. Only by defining the USO clearly can we begin to design a system that will fund the services required. It is our nation's mission statement for the Postal Service. Clarity of mission should be job one. Many independent and objective authorities have been calling for this. The Commission itself has recommended it. The Government Accountability Office, the independent watchdog of Congress, the Postal Service's Inspector General. Defining the USO was the central recommendation of the Department of Treasury-led task force on the U.S. postal system. A presidential executive order created the task force in 2018. The Postal Service itself has stated, quote, defining the USO is an important public policy task, end quote. In testimony to Congress just less than a year ago, it stated that it was their intent, quote, to develop and provide recommendations to Congress to redefine the USO, end quote. Now, before we can explore what changes may be necessary, we need to first understand how the law currently defines the USO. The Commission has significant experience exploring this question. In a comprehensive study, the Commission determined that, unlike other countries, the USO in the United States is largely undefined, and instead is comprised of a broad set of policy statements with only a few legislative prescriptions. The Commission currently estimates the cost of providing universal service to be more than $5 billion annually. The Commission has defined the universal service obligation as having 7 attributes: geographic, range of products, access to facilities, delivery frequency, prices, affordability, quality of service, and users' rights or enforcement. Other nations have imposed universal service requirements directly on its postal operator by statute, regulation, licensing, or contract. Countries like Australia, Canada, Germany, just to name a few, have a detailed definition of universal postal service with specific standards for delivery and retail access. Aside from the mandate since 1982 to provide 6 days of delivery, Congress has rarely established rigid numerical standards of minimally acceptable service for each of these features. Now, why does the USO matter? Why should we care? We know that the current structure of the Postal Service does not provide the revenue to cover its expenses, and it is unsustainable. Aside from the financial pressure of generating sufficient funds to remain solvent, a key worry is somehow funding the $5+ billion and growing annual universal service obligations, let alone monies to undertake capital investments and pay other multi-billion-dollar obligations such as retiree costs. In the absence of a clear definition of its governmental mission of universal service, particularly given the Postal Service's current financial challenges, each of us likely have a differing view of what the Postal Service must provide in its services and operations to fulfill the USO. Since there's no specific agreed-upon definition, all of our views will have different price tags. The Postal Service's 5-year strategic plan asserted that they want to expand beyond hard copy mail into digital products and services. Some other groups urge the Postal Service to expand even further into other sectors, such as banking services. On the other end of the spectrum, others have called for the Postal Service to exit some competitive markets altogether. Past proposals in Congress would direct them to offer certain services, tell them what vehicles to procure and how to do it, institute bans on closing any post offices or facilities from anywhere from 2 to 5 years, mandate specific service standards. The list goes on and on and on. Now let me be clear. I'm agnostic on what Congress mandates. If 218 House members and 51 senators manage to agree and the President signs their legislation, then that, under the Constitution, is the prerogative and authority of the Congress. What deeply concerns me, however, is that the Postal Service is flying off a cliff, underscoring in its own plans that it can only avoid the coming crash with legislative change. Surely, there is a limit to what the Postal Service can afford and remain self-sustaining. When we hit the bottom of the cliff and the Postal Service runs out of liquidity, as they predict within just the next few years, whether you are a mailer, an employee, a competitor, or just the average American citizen receiving your mail each day, we will be in full crisis mode. Crisis mode will not ensure that we end up with the right postal service for America. Instead, it will likely be choices of desperation. That is not good for anyone, particularly this national treasure which is rooted in the Constitution. If instead, like other nations, we have a thoughtful back to basics, what do we require the Postal Service to do as a government entity to serve this nation? That is, what is the USO and what is its cost? We can better ensure that it can remain self-financing. Thus, it seems that policymakers really need to start at the beginning and decide what exactly we as a nation need and how it can be funded. The Postal Service, with its balance sheet and future projections, needs clarity and certainty. Is it pie in the sky to think this back to basics can occur? No, not any more than proposed fixes that have yet to see enactment, despite yeoman's efforts in Congress for the past decade plus. Maybe a focus on the fundamentals would be more fruitful. Congress would not have to start at scratch. Indeed, the PRC laid the foundation in the comprehensive report on the USO. Congress can pick it up and hit the ground running on better defining it. One approach Congress may consider is the 1996 Telecommunications Act, where Congress directed an independent regulator, the Federal Communications Commission, to define universal service in the telecommunications space under specific congressionally mandated criteria. Given the PRC's similar independence and its substantial work on the USO, a similar approach may be helpful here. Defining the USO is an approach that nearly every other industrialized nation on the planet accomplished years, if not decades ago, with the same commitment as we would demand to guarantee their citizens a specific level of universal postal services. We are the world's laggards in this regard. My call today is for clarity of mission. Despite the enormous challenges, I do remain hopeful that our leaders will, at the end of the day, have the foresight to make tough decisions, the wisdom to see the world as it is rather than as we would like it to be, and the courage to compromise on behalf of the greater good. Our nation's postal system, its 633,000 employees, and the 329 million Americans who depend on it expect no less.